Thank you very much, Gufan Shaji Gwai. I understand, of course, from Benue, tourism also took her to the east to get married, so it's part of it. All right, let's welcome our guests, in the studio. Chief Olonsho Koka is the Director General, Nigerian Tourism Development Authority. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Otumba Abiodun Ajibo is Executive Secretary, Nigerian Institute for Cultural Orientation. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And Dr. Munzali Dantata, Chairman Board of Trustees, Federation of Tourism Association of Nigeria, and former Director General of the National Institute for Hospitality and Tourism. And joining us via Zoom is Barrister Wale Ojulanre, Director General, Bureau of Tourism Corporation, Ekiti State. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless.
All right, we'll start, with the DG Tourism Development Authority. And let's start like this, the status of your sector, having, taken over the reins of leadership of the Tourism Development Authority. Perhaps you would been, seen the data, you've seen how vibrant we are in terms of potentiality, in terms of concepts, in terms of actuality. How are we faring as compared to other countries across the world, especially some of the countries that got independence around our own time, especially developing countries like Nigeria? How are we faring?
Thank you very much. First of all, just to put a lid on that question, we're not where we should be. The potentials of Nigeria are greater than what we have, but there have been improvements. One of the things we generally don't do is build the right foundation for the structure we want it to carry. So over the years, we have been building the foundation required to carry a vibrant and thriving tourism ecosystem. Now, let me take one example, which I have spoken about a few times here, which is the laws that govern a business, for example, like telecoms, MTN. If the laws are not right to encourage development, you will not get the kind of development irrespective of the potentials of that business in Nigeria. So one of the things we looked at very quickly was to change the laws of Nigeria as per regulation, taxation, legislation on tourism. Now there's a new law. I think NIOT also got a new law in 2020, and that is what we're trying to implement. And what does that really look at? It treats tourism as a business. It separates it from culture. It makes it collaborative between the states and the federal government agencies rather than it setting down in, I told you to do so regime, which it once did. And of course, there was a Supreme Court judgment that stopped the federal agencies actually syndicating with the state governments to promote tourism. COVID taught us one thing. It came brutally and we were all not prepared for it. COVID made sure that the new T in technology, in tourism and travel is technology. The amount of tech that is now required for you to drive tourism, it's no longer the pamphlets that you hand out on the road. It's digitally driven, entertainment-focused tourism. That's what Lagos saw in December. Yes, we have the religious tourism, we have the mountains, we have the rainforest, we have the dunes, we have the Sahel, we have the desert, we have, on another side, we have the culture of the Nigerian people, which has a special vibe of its own. And by the special grace of God, we have the new mediums of cultural expression. Our music is the largest in Africa. It's gaining momentum globally. Our film is number 2 in the world. Even our food. If you take something like religion, you have the Redeemed Christian Church of Christ in Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, which has an auditorium that holds 1 million people, number 1. Number 2, it has 187, at my last count, branches around the world. Now, that is even bigger than the Nigerian Foreign Service. So the training requirements are more technologically based now than what they were before. So the requirements for tourism we have also looked at. We've had partnerships with Wikipedia, with Google. We've digitized a lot of our processes. People are going to be able to register online, pay online. One of the things we've also done is ISO 9001:2015, which is about standards. So we will be able to partake in the ECOWAS agreement that we've signed up to ensure that a five-star hotel is a five-star hotel, not cup and bucket in the bathroom.
You have created a scenario that, I would just have almost allowed you to continue, but I just want, to bring in our other guests. We would, visit all these tourist sites in your mind as we continue. But let's bring Otumba, Abel Najiboye into the discussion. You also will be doing some cross-fertilization with him in terms of promoting the Nigerian agenda, especially through culture. What have been, the problems in terms of gestating some of our ideas and bringing them to fruition? We keep on talking about potentials. At the end of the day, most governments, at the end of, we still end up at the point of potentials. We've not driven traffic as we need to, and then, have we, evolved as against, just like he mentioned, pamphlets and perhaps in some cases those who have gone a little bit more than that, inboard, on-flight magazines and all that. Where are we so far, especially when you look at it from marketing our culture in such a way it becomes so attractive that people want to touch and experience?
Thank you very much. I just realized that culture is a great potential that Nigeria does not even think about. We're not even aware of how we can turn culture into some magnificent, earnings, revenue earnings, and for me, there are two areas to look at when it comes to culture. It is not per se about what you can earn. Culture is the basic source of pride for humanity. If a nation misses how culture propels pride in humanity, then that nation has missed everything. That's where to start from. We have absolute no respect for our culture. We are not packaging our culture properly. We are not taking it serious, and it's a major setback. Now, you need to first of all appreciate that before you move to its economic benefits, which again is ad infinitum. Okay. A country who does not have absolute respect for its culture cannot grow beyond struggles. And that's what has happened to us. Our culture has been sandwiched between Jewish culture, British culture, Arabic cultures. So it's beginning to look like we are a bit confused. So first of all, we need to appreciate that our young people must be taught, must be orientated properly with respect to our culture. It's like a man without a cultural identity is like a man hanging in the sky. Your head is neither touching the sky nor your feet touching the floor. I was in Brazil a couple of months back before the end of the year, and I saw adults wailing and crying for lack of cultural identity. They have no indigenous language apart from Portuguese. They know for sure that they are black people from Nigeria, those taken as slaves from 500 years back. It bothers them to say, why am I here? Where am I from? Who are my people? Okay? They expressed that to me in huge numbers, wherever I went, crying, adults. That is the importance of cultural identity. Even if you have all the money in the world, if you lack cultural identity, you will die unhappy. That's one. Two, the culture of Nigeria is such that as a professional, one has to be careful. I can talk about culture of the Yoruba people with a lot of confidence. The culture of the northern people has been enmeshed in Islam. So we need to be careful how we go there. So what we have done in my agency is to commission some professors from the north. Please write for us, provide literature that will give us the origin of Hausa and Fulani people. Origin. You understand? Now, with respect to culture of the Yoruba people, there are 450 million people across the world that are connected to Yoruba culture. I was in Brazil, like I said, with about 89 million people waiting to be converted, waiting to say, look, this is where I belong. My progenitors are from here. Where is this place located? How can I get there?
we'll come back to that, and I visited Bahia as well, the Orisha, Grove and all that, and we'll talk about that a little bit down the line. But let me bring in, Dr. Munzali Dantata. You have been in this sector for a while, superintending over different aspects of it. Issues of hospitality. Okay, you get people into the system. How do you host them? How do you give them an experience that will make them come back? Have we succeeded in this? Or most times, when we make ourselves a destination, has it just been a one-off for most of the people you've seen? Have we been able to sustain interest, especially when we get it? I mean, when some administrations come, we have this what they call this fast start, and then after a while, things a little bit fizzle out. But have we been able to, in some cases, sustain interest in the Nigerian tourism sector?
Well, thank you for having me. You said I've been in the tourism industry for some years. It's actually exactly 40 years. I joined the industry in 1985, and we are now in 2025. That's 40 years when I incorporated my company, and I entered from the private sector. And along the way, I had a stint in the public sector when I was invited to head now tour. Coming back to your question about whether we have succeeded, I would like to say first and foremost, just like Chief Coker said, tourism is a business, and I think it has to be recognized as a business by both the federal government and the state governments. And my brother here, the DG, talked about the cultural industry, and he said in one of the parastatals in culture. And I would say that about 25 or 30 years ago, culture was chosen as the tourism product of Nigeria. That is, say, the selling point. That when you think of Nigeria, you think of that. And it was thought that culture, because in any business you have to look at what you have comparative and competitive advantage. Can we compete with the South Africans or the Kenyans in wildlife, our Yankari? And the answer is no. They are way ahead of us, though we do have also our game reserves. And can we compete, let's say, in religious tourism? Can we compete with the Saudis or the Israelis or other religious countries? Though we do have, some religious sites in Nigeria, and also some with some religions identified with this, no. So the federal government, in its own wisdom, chose tourism, chose culture, and a ministry was, they were created called Culture and Tourism. And today, some ministries in the states still bear that name, even if at the federal level, the two have been separated. So Nigeria has to find its main tourism product. It's like a restaurant, the main dish. So when you enter a restaurant, you enter for the main dish. Every other side dish is irrelevant. It's the main dish we came for. So we have to find that main dish of Nigeria. If we are talking about international tourism, what will people come here for? And it was thought best, culture, and we've been promoting that for many years until now that the two are being separated. So having said that, I think first and foremost we have to appreciate it's a business. It's no different from selling Coca-Cola or selling MTN cars or selling rice or selling anything. So in fact, tourism is like a factory. The only difference is that with factories, you don't go to the factory. You consume their products in the market. For example, you may never have been to Japan, but you are enjoying Japanese products, from Toyota to Toshiba to so many things. But in the case of tourism, you have to come to the factory to enjoy the product. And that factory is Nigeria. So anybody could enjoy Nigerian cocoa, which is exported, or any Nigerian product, but you cannot enjoy the Nigerian tourism product until it comes to the factory, which is Nigeria. So that's the difference. Otherwise, it's a product just like any product. And that is the job of the federal government, to get them to Nigeria. So, and once they land at Murtala Mohammed or Abuja, Nnamdi Azikiwe, then they are up for grabs. There are 36, branches of that factory, and each one,
the FCT,
including FCT, that's 37. And it's the job of each one of them to get them to their own state. The federal government would have done its part. That's through the NTDA, marketing in London Travel Market and other markets. And once they get here, then Cross River would like them to go to Calabar. Lagos may want to train them. And then also there's the Daba in Kano and the fishing festival. So, and that's how it works in every country. So, so we have to get it right there. And then when it comes to the hospitality, because tourism is about two basic components, the transportation and the accommodation. My brother had talked about the famous Supreme Court that downplayed the role of the federal government. And I would like to say in one area you cannot downplay the federal government, and that is in the registration of the hotels. If you say you are 5-star, somebody must, identify as 5-star. Not yourself, that is the hotel, or even your state government. It should be the central authority. That's how it is in every country. So that when I was in office, there was a case of a Brazilian television group that came to Nigeria to cover a conference, and they booked a hotel in Lagos that called themselves 5-star. And when they came, the hotel was nowhere near 5-star, and they demanded for a refund of their money, and they couldn't get their money. Then they moved to another hotel, and they left the case with the embassy, the Brazilian embassy, to get a refund for their money by the time they finished their project in Nigeria and returned back to Brazil. And but because they were deceived that the hotel is 5-star. So that is a typical case, and that does not tell well on Nigeria. So that's why in some cases you cannot remove actually the authority of the federal government in some places, and in one is the registration of the hotels. In others it may be incentive. Of course, tourism is not in the exclusive of the federal government. It's both the states and the federal government have, right to legislate and to run. So, to me, there has to be a coordinated plan and execution of that plan for us to succeed in the international market. But of course, there's domestic tourism, which is even the major part of tourism in any world.
Especially with countries with huge populations like ours.
Yes.
All right, let's go to the sub-nationals. Barrister Wale Lanre-Ojo has been listening in from Ekiti State. He is the DG, Bureau of Tourism and Corporation, Ekiti State. You will listen to some of the observations made by Dr. Munzali Dantata as well in terms of categorizations and collaboration with the state. How is the sector in your state? What are the challenges and what are the hurdles you have been able to scale so far? I can see Visit Ekiti that you are wearing. We are now visiting you to ask you these questions.
Thank you. Thank you, moderator. Special regards to Alhaji Musa Alida Tata, who I served as the public relations officer when he was the president, Federation of Tourism Association of Nigeria. And my dear brother, the DG, and the Koshawa. I've listened to every one of them, but I'm not really happy with the setup. We are not talking about the problem of tourism. All what we are saying, we are just winking in the dark. And it is not good to wink in the dark when we are not talking about the fundamentals that can help tourism to grow in Nigeria. We are not talking of having a policy, we are not talking of having a development plan. That is another case. From Ekiti, I'm happy that the governor of Ekiti State, Governor Biodun Abayomi Oyebanji, understands tourism very well. and he has been able to lay down the fundamental. When he appointed me, he called me to a meeting. I said, what do I need? And I said, I need you. I need you to be the face of tourism in Ekiti. And he told me plainly that he is not going to give me any budget, any big budget, until we are able to produce the tourism policy number one and tourism development master plan. That without these two documents, strategic documents, the tourism cannot be sustainable. It will just be somebody now coming this year telling us to do one thing or the other. But if we have the policy and we build the tourism development master plan on it, then it will be sustainable. If we leave tomorrow, then the people will be able to know that this is where we have stopped, this is what we are doing, and this is what we're going to be doing. This is absent in Nigeria as a nation. We have not been able to put on a sustainable policy and a tourism development master plan, which any state, any country, I've been to at least, I've been to 65 countries in the world, and I've studied the tourism pattern of this country. The two things, majorly they have to do with, but it's the tourism policy and master plan, and that's what we are having in the Ekiti state. Our tourism policy will be launched in the next 2 weeks, and we are working on our tourism master plan. Because the political will is there, the governor of Ekiti state understands tourism thoroughly well, and is taking it as a business. So this is the report I'm having from Ekiti state. Like I said, the fundamental of the lane, it was by the DG, Nigerian Tourism Development Authority, who took the case of a legal framework of NTDC to NTA to the 8th Assembly, 8th Senate. And I made a very good presentation because I went to Kenya, I went to South Africa, I went to Malaysia because of my thesis in law, which is about the appraisal of the legal framework for the development and sustainable tourism in Nigeria. So I presented it and we were able to come out with NTDA law. And this must have been followed by having a tourism policy and tourism development master plan. Without these two documents, Nigeria will be weakening in the dark. Thank you very much.
All right. The first intervention from Ekiti State, it says the policy and the master plan. Is there any place, or is there is there a roadmap towards getting to that destination?
Thank you. When I took over NTDC in 2017, there was a very old tourism development roadmap that had been written in collaboration with the UNWTO. That tourism policy was reviewed by the previous administration under Alhaji Lai Mohammed. Then there was a departure from that tourism development roadmap that we needed a Nigerian national tourism development policy, which was a simplified document that just addressed our own priorities and he's holding it up.
Yeah. I can see that Barrister Wale Ojolari has a copy of it looks bulky, but you're talking about something a little bit simpler. Yeah?
Yes, to bring it into our reach, we needed a lighter document of our own contemporary problems that we could attack with what we had on ground. The ministry is responsible for policy. So the ministry is still charged with that, and we are hopeful that the review of that master document will come out shortly. At NTDC, we just looked at what we needed to do, and we developed what we call the chief plan. And that was look at our corporate governance, which meant the laws that we needed in terms of taxation, regulation, legislature. We looked at the human capital requirements. What skills does tourism need now? That was pre-COVID and now post-COVID, and it pointed out to digital technologies. If you look at what has happened to transportation, Uber, Airbnb, accommodation, just by technology, you can see how important that is, especially with digital marketing. We looked at the infrastructure requirements. We have, but we haven't held, a Presidential Council on Tourism. That needs to hold. That means that the President presides over all the assets that tourism requires. So from the immigration to the visa to police to customs to natural security in the localities. When the president presides, it's no more minister asking a favor from a minister. It's a presidential order. So the Presidential Council on Tourism needs to sit. There's also something called the Tourism Satellite Account. A lot of figures have been thrown around from 12 million to 92 billion to whatever that has happened in Nigeria over this dirty December period. Now, without a tourism satellite account, you can't measure how many people came, where they came from, where they stayed, how much they spent. And that data is so important because it allows you to target market those specific
planning
individuals.
subsequent
Also planning,
events.
Uber will tell you that 5,000 people booked from New York, a ride that they started at Muritala Mohammed Airport, and some went to Festac, some went to Banana Island, some went to Victoria Island. They have all that data. And that data is how you know how to position your digital marketing to continue the story. Most people would be afraid to travel anywhere in the world. And that's the first thing. Oh, what am I going to do there? How do I get it? Then they do a bit of research. What you show them online is what they see. Then they go to the planning. Then they go to the purchasing of whatever it is, the airline experience, the visa experience, the embassy experience, the airport in Nigeria experience, the travel to the hotel experience, their first entertainment, as in either a cinema or a nightclub or a restaurant. All those things matter. And digital tracking and digital targeting and search engine optimization to go after those people is how tourism is marketed. That is a new part of the tourism portfolio that needs to be addressed. If you look at, I said chiefs, the events have grown from the dances in small village squares to concerts that
although that's very important, still very important, especially to people like me.
I totally agree with you. But as I mentioned, our new mediums of cultural expression, our film, our music, our fashion, our food. You must also remember that our demographics, 65% of our population is of that age, that is what they really pay attention to. And that is what is making the noise globally, positive noise about Nigeria. So we must satisfy that, even though we are keeping the old alive and using the new to support and grow the old. Now, I'm sure all of us on this table will agree that funding is an issue. Marketing consumes funding. Funding has been grossly inadequate, and until we invest, it's just not about the roads or about the security. It's about us investing in putting a positive image. Not come to Nigeria, it's a beautiful place, but having the activities in Nigeria speak directly to individuals that if David O can play in Zambisa Forest, then it must be okay. Those sort of sublime messages are the things that we must start to push, and they are paid for. They're not free. So funding of those, and then funding of some government events. Argungu is owned by the Kebbi State Governor. If the Kebbi State Governor doesn't fund it, it doesn't happen. I think it's happened in the last 2 years, and I hope it continues. There are many colorful events like Ujudi Oba, Ofala, Osun Osogbo. If you package them well and you allow my seat 2B, to be sold with a ticket, with a hotel, with tour, properly packaged, like how you go to South Africa, how you go to Jerusalem, how you go to Dubai, you buy a package. If those things are allowed to be properly packaged, and I'm speaking here to the private sector, it is the private sector's responsibility to create the packages. A lot of people go to Abuja go to Lagos very often. Can you buy a package of a hotel, airline ticket, transportation, and maybe some meals and a tour?
All in one.
All in one. If we don't start from that level, rather than the silo operations that we're doing, we will not be able to reduce the cost to be able to present a price-friendly package to the global market.
Dr. Dantata, is spoken to, talking about a holistic, concerted effort in, presenting our tourism package. You've been there for years, 40 years, seeing these things, some years thriving, some other years a lull and all that. But in terms of the linkages within the ecosystem, within the sector, how have we fared, and why are there so many gaps, for instance, in some of these things he has spoken about? Why are we not leveraging on what these young men and women are doing, especially in the entertainment sector, that is exciting the whole world and, putting Nigeria in good light? Why have we not been able to leverage on everything we have and turning it to a one stunning package that would, advertise Nigeria in the best possible way?
Well, thank you. Before I answer the question you asked directly, can I revisit the tourism master plan?
Yes.
And the tourism policy, as well as the Presidential Council on Tourism, which I believe is the subject we're talking about before we move. Because my brother in Ekiti, probably talk about what they are doing in Ekiti. They also launched their tourism master plan. And we talked about, Chief Hoka here talked about the tourism master plan of Nigeria, which I am very proud to say that I participated both in the discussions that came up with the master plan when, the UNWTO experts were coming to Nigeria. And then it was launched. And I also participated in the Presidential Council on Tourism, chaired by President Obasanjo, who set it up. I was representing the organized private sector together with Chief Ibru, and there are state governors and ministers in that council, but we are the two representing the private sector. Now, the master plan is no different from, let's say, the Abuja master plan, which has been in place since Abuja was created more than 50 years ago. It's a roadmap to be followed. It may be adjusted here and there when the need arises, like now with digitalization of business, as our brother here is mentioning. So that tourism master plan, if we are talking about foreign or international tourism, is very important. And even if the states have their own master plans and policies, they must still align with the central one as long as we are marketing. And so that document today, because without a master plan, it will be ad hoc. Whenever you have a change of government, a new president comes in, he may come up with ideas, a new governor comes in, or even a minister. But if there's a master plan, even if government changes hands, today is PDP, tomorrow is APC or whatever, they still follow that master plan. And that's how it happens in sports and in every industry that you want to promote. There must be a master plan which is constant, and then the policy which derives its own inspiration from the master plan. So in this respect, we have not done very well. We have not been consistent. Even the ministry itself is always changing names, and it is tomorrow. First of all, tourism has been with investment. If you go back to the 1990s when I came in, ministry was a department under Ministry of Trade, and then even the states up to now, it is still with trade, with commerce. Then it was moved to information, and now, I don't even know where it belongs now. So it's always just changing hands, and there's no consistency. But I believe first and foremost that since it's a business, it should be more with trade, commerce, rather than with, information or national orientation. And the culture part of it is just as a product. The culture is the product that Nigeria is best put forward, telling the world that we have this beautiful culture, we have this festival, Oshun Oshogo, Arugun Festival, the Daba, and so on and so forth. And that's where culture comes in, and it's all captured in the master plan. But today we don't have, I believe, any roadmap we are following. We are just living.
Are there any efforts, DG, to do that very quickly so that we lay a foundation on which the sector can now stand firmly?
I believe so.
Before I come to...
I believe so. I believe the Ministry of Tourism has all the data they require. I think it's a question of the internationals that they need to speak to come and shut down, a telephone book document to, 100 pages that everybody can take their bit of and pursue.
Before I come to culture, I was a bit younger. Of course, I'm not, the age bracket of my guests today. But when I was a bit younger, I saw some, calendars and magazines that you flip and you know that this month there's Agungu. Next month, you know what is happening. Then you see the pictures. There used to be some things that, we used to have some kind of, data, not data, but at least something to show you that this is what's happening this month. You have that calendar at the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. I think it used to be printed by the ministry or something. You see each month, you see what's there, and then you see pictures of, those activities, and then you see the dates. I've come across them maybe in 2 different years that we saw those things. So even as a child, you knew that this will happen. At that time, I'd never gone to Agungu before, but I knew that there's a place called Agungu. And they have this calabash that they used to, fish and all that. Because I'm from a riverine area, but we didn't use calabash. So I was, fascinated by somebody using calabash to fish. And that drew my attention. But we're not seeing much of that. What happened, Doctor?
Well, just like Chief said, tourism is a dynamic industry, and it's changing very fast. Even though marketing is done, you are talking about when it was analog, when it was manual. Companies come up with their brochures and advertise their sites and their festivals. But now most of that is now done digitally.
But we're still seeing, when you go abroad, you still see them in neon lights and all that, even when you drive through, some of these destinations advertised. We went for the World Cup in Brazil. The DG has spoken about Brazil. And as you are entering the country, they will be telling you get things from the tournament that will be telling you where to go and see a live anaconda, reservations and all that, to go to different places that are not even designated earlier for the World Cup, but you can easily go and visit. We had this information. Even at the airport there, you can pick some of them up. I mean, that's what I'm talking about, that even for the casual person just going, you have some things that quickly begin to speak to you, pictures and all that. But before we, continue in that direction, let's talk to Otumba Ajiboye very quickly. Is there any momentum, for instance, being driven by your agency in trying to perhaps distill some of these cultures and use them, as things that could drive traffic to us? For instance, you've spoken about, your people from the Southwest and how you're connected to places as far-flung as Brazil, Trinidad and Tobago, Cuba, and those, traditional religions still exist in those countries. Have you been able to do some linkages or, perhaps, organize some kind of, connection with these groups of people to be able to drive traffic to Nigeria?
Well, to tell you the truth, when we discovered that the Orisha, Yoruba Orisha, has an audience of 450 million people across the world, we knew automatically there's a market here. The total number of people that have visited Mecca since Mecca started is 2.5 million people. And Saudi Arabia has been generating about $312 billion US. Spain, about 94 million people visit Spain yearly for tourism. Italy, about 60 million people. Now, the point is very simple. We started a project called World Orisha Congress. We registered it with Professor Wole Soyinka as a patron, Professor Wande Abimbola as a patron, the Oni of Ife as chairman board of trustees. What are we trying to do? We're trying to say, okay, this is a tourism potential we have here. It is ready-made. It is a market 450 million people across the world, Cuba, Trinidad and Tobago and all of those places. So, and they are very concerned about coming to Nigeria. So, we did all we need to do with ministerial approval, presidential approval, and we're moving on that. By God's grace, maybe another 2-3 years, it will come to fruition. And we can then begin to see how well we need to put our house in order with infrastructures here and there, hotels, accommodation, transportation, and safety, security, and all of that. To create a belt within Ibadan, Ife, Oshogbo, Oyo, and get the state governments interested. Get the business people interested in building infrastructure. That is a sustainable tourism, potentiality that we can't shy away from. So with that project, we are sure that influx of tourists into Nigeria will be higher. Okay, but you see, our major problem is the fact that is Nigeria properly marketed? Anybody who stays abroad believes that you come to Nigeria, you are beheaded the next minute. Because our media had not done a good job of it. Are you saying that America does not have a lot of dark spots? But do we see that in the international media regularly? We don't. So first of all, we need to wear our patriotic toga to an extent that we know what to say about our country and what not to publish about our country, to at least allow the potential tourists to have a bit of rest of mind. Nigeria is not as difficult, as dangerous as media, puts it out there. That's one. Two, we need to understand that. See, let me tell you, there is no way we'll talk about culture, we won't talk a bit about religion. Okay, but the truth remains that with the cultural potentialities we have, tourism should have been a very easy ride. Even if we are able to manage 500,000 visitors to come for that congress that we're talking about, and they spend $5,000 any which way, it's a lot of money. We graduate from there. We move from there. Then we have a country in dire need of economic reflation. We are in a terrible economic situation in Nigeria. We need to reflate this economy in a way that foreign exchange becomes priority. So for us, the way to start is to make sure that the young man on the street appreciates his culture. That is the essence of cultural orientation. That is what my institute is created to do. The man on the street, the 10-year-old man on the street must be proud to be an Hausa man, a Fulani man, a Yoruba man, or Igbo man. Our children don't even speak our languages anymore. So, the problem has to be solved. So what did we do? We created Nigerian Academy for Cultural Studies. So that young people, 18-year-old, 19, 20, can be admitted in that school. It's a monotechnic. Can be admitted and be taught properly the culture of his people. You don't know who you are, you cannot decide what you want to be. You don't know where you're coming from, you can't even determine where you are, and you can't determine where you want to go next. So we need to first of all ensure that we bring culture to the fore and make our children proud of who they are. Once that is done, you achieve what we call cultural pride. With cultural pride, every other thing will fall in place. You will handle, I say it all the time, you can't talk of a national identity without cultural identity. A human being is first of all a citizen of a culture before becoming a citizen of a country. So we need to go back to the drawing boards, ensure that our culture becomes important to us.
In the last 4 weeks, we have recorded over 11,500 visitors to that place. So we are branding them, we are concessioning them out to those people who will invest money, because the government has no business in doing business. Tourism is private sector driven, and that's what we have in Nigeria. You cannot give me 10 tourism sites that have been fully developed to an international standard in Nigeria. Nigeria has over 38 waterfalls. None has been developed. The modicum of development you see in Osun State, I lured the former governor Aregbesola, to that place. That's the modicum what you've seen there. And what we are doing in Ekiti State, we are possession it now, and in the next few weeks, you come to Ekiti, that is Anita Waterfall, Ipole Loro, and you'll be happy. We have done a lot of improvement at Ikogosi. When you come there, you won't like to leave. The former minister, one of the best ministers we ever had in that ministry, she came there during Easter. She couldn't spend Easter anywhere until she came to Ekiti and spent. So in Ekiti, we are branding, we are marketing, we are leveraging on the digital marketing of the Nigerian Tourism Development Authority. Chief Koka can bear me witness here. He has been instrumental in helping us putting the Ekiti on the digital note. Not that we are not doing it, but it's one of the offices, it's one of the function of his office. And Chief Koka has been doing it. I've been telling him, we don't have to spend money on digitalization. He has to do it, and he has been doing it. So this is what we have in Ekiti State. We are improving on 3 major sites. One, the Osogbo take its source from Ekiti State. We are improving that.
Where exactly in Ekiti State?
Osogbo will not be what is it now. It will not be where tourists come and visit, because Osogbo hails from Ekiti State, and before they can celebrate Osogbo, they must come to Ekiti and do the proper celebration. Celebration before celebration, not party after party. Celebration before celebration.
So where exactly in Ekiti State are you talking about exactly?
Igede Ekiti. Chikoka is part of Igede Ekiti. He may not tell you. So we are doing a lot. The governor of Ekiti State is investing on it. Then we have a rock here. It's only rock in Nigeria that has an amphitheater that can seat 340 people in its belly with 7 caves. So we are investing. So when you come to Ekiti, you will still wonder. And let me remind you, it is only Ekiti that you have a palm tree that has 42 heads. Yes, you have to. And it's only Ekiti that you cannot die in the cloud. By Easter, I will invite you to come and die in the cloud.
Let's interrogate some of these claims a little bit. Very, very shortly, let's interrogate, some of these claims a little bit. And I've been to your, Ikogosi Warm Spring. At the time, it had a zoo.
When?
Have you, resuscitated that zoo? There was a zoo once you enter, before you get to even the Warm Spring itself. There was a little zoo that, there was a rumor when we were growing up that the lion escaped, but it wasn't. I'm not sure it was true. But has that been done again? It used to give us some, a nice experience as children. There was a little zoo with, this barbed wire around.
I think the culture of keeping zoos is against the conservationist and the animal rights. Particularly keeping a carnivorous animal within the precinct and access of a deluge of people is against the concept of new tourism. But there have been a lot of facilities planted around this area, particularly for the kids, for the children. So when you come to Ikogosi now, come with your kid, they will even not allow you to leave because of the facilities there. So you can now hike in Ikogosi, you can now have party in Ikogosi, your children can stay there for there are these children facility there now that will make them stay for many days.
All right, thank you very much for that good report from Ekiti State. Don't just send the invitation via Zoom. We need it electronically so that we can actually come and see for ourselves. Let's, Chief, that's one of your states. What are you doing? Apart from, some of the recommendations you've gotten from Ekiti State, to other states with high tourism potentialities. We've not had much from Bauchi. It used to be a big, destination in the past, especially with Yankari Games Reserve. So, in fact, if you see Bauchi from using drone or if you're in a flight, it's picturesque. Just looking at the hills and all that. Are we doing anything with states also to, promote these places as a destination?
Thank you very much. All the assets you've spoken about are not federal government assets, they're state assets. And the states have been very silo in terms of how they manage or develop their assets. Look at Obudu. I've been to Obudu. Drove 9 hours from Abuja to Obudu. Beautiful place. Incredible weather. But it's a state asset. In the last budget, I don't think it was utilized. There was, I think, 5 billion naira that was earmarked for some of the repairs at Obudu. Obudu, it's a lovely place, but it's kind of stuck in time past. It just needs a little money, electricity, water, access, safe access road, the cable car. Incredible place. But I can't go and take the title of that document, of that asset, which only one dimension of it is being used, to raise funding for them, like Ekiti did with the Kugusi Warm Springs, to help them develop it to world standards, to push it out. There's Cross Rock Hotel in Rock Hotel in Kano, where it was built for the Queen's visit. Incredible. Let's not even go far. Let's talk about Abuja here, where we all are. Cross Rock, since Cross Rock was opened, what has been done to it? Has it been curated for a better experience, for a safe experience? Is there power there? Are there toilets there? Is there a little water bar there? The Abuja Zoo, here in Abuja, the children's zoo. If you go there, you will look at it. It's something that can be developed into a greater experience. The center of Nigeria is Katampe Hill, supposedly, Katampe Hill. What marks the center of Nigeria is no bigger than this, it's just a block. What is the hill used for? It's a transmission station and a radio station. Incredible views of Abuja. What I'm speaking to is the silo thinking of the owners of the asset and the difficulties federal agencies encounter in dealing with them when it comes to how can we do better with this. The only thing we have really been able to push is participation technically and sometimes financially with the festivals they have. The digital platforms that we have built, one is Tour Nigeria, which has a digital footprint of about 10 million, and there's another one, Nigerian Flavors. And our preach is tour Nigeria and experience the flavors of Nigeria. And those flavors we also, we've done in partnership with Google Arts and Culture to show that Nigeria, from, as I said, the cooking techniques, the fashion, the film, all those things are the only way you can truly push the Nigerian positive story out. He said something that we don't have the engines to echo our positive. We don't own Google, we don't own CNN, we don't own BBC, we don't own all those platforms. But we can make enough noise on our own terms to drown out the negative and promote the positive
but
about
perhaps
Nigeria.
you might also want to focus on, the improving domestic capacity in terms of hospitality. Because when you look at, for instance, Turkey, in the past 6 years, Turkey has become something else in terms of a destination. Is it the cuisine? Is it the sites? Is it most of the time? Apart from the adverts, it's people's experience that drive the traffic. Because when you go, you want to return to those places, and the training of the staff there.
You are marketing them. Let me interrupt.
So I'm just talking about, because in the past, few years, they seem to have leaped, ahead of so many countries in the way they have approached this. But let me bring, before it's not a bad score, but I'm saying we can learn from good practices. Dr. Dantata, you have a sector, mostly, apart from, your job as a DG Institute for Hospitality and Tourism. You've been a lot, in the private sector. What are the challenges, especially when you want to drive some of these things, in terms of your interaction with government agencies? Where are the hurdles that perhaps become too high for a private sector-driven initiative to scale through?
I think in as much as government is assisting the private sector, but sometimes government could also be the impediment to the progress of the private sector, because just like my brother in Ekiti said, tourism is supposed to be private sector driven. I'll give you an example. You know, the NTDA, I don't know whether they still operate a tour department, but going back 35 years ago, when government was even in Lagos, they had what they call the CVU vehicles, and also they had buses. They received visitors coming in to Abuja, even from foreign heads of states to delegations. And I've always thought they had no business running a tour. And at that time, I had bought buses and tried to make case with NTDC at that time, or even the tourism board. It was called NTB. But they held on to their tour, you know, and they were competing directly with us in the private sector. And they still are, you know, I can see the DG nodding his head. So, but they have no business running a tour business. So the government and both at the federal and at the state have to appreciate their roles. And also the private sector. I am happy to say that I was among the first Nigerians to attend the World Travel Market in London. I believe it was maybe in 1988 or 89, and was sponsored by British Airways. Nigeria didn't even have a stand at the travel market. And we were sponsored, 3 of us, I believe Akala and Adefope and myself. And we made a case, and that was when NTDC eventually came in and started, you know, having a stand, which has not, you know, survived today. NTDC is not there, NTD is not there, and I believe it's some just Nigerians who are in London now try to organize a Nigerian stand. So there's no much participation from Nigeria, whether from government or private sector. So, and that's all because the private sector is not playing its role very well, and sometimes also the public sector is breathing down the neck of the private sector. So there has to be this separation, whereby the public sector remain where they should be as a regulator, as an overall marketer, even
creating an enabling environment for the private
and then
sector
the private sector
to
will now grow. Because as far as I'm concerned, the only sector that is growing and is doing well is the hospitality section. I mean, you have the hotels, the Transcorp Hiltons, the Federal Palace, Eco Hotel. So the hotels are doing very well, but not because of tourism strictly, visitors, because they are receiving maybe even more business visitors. People who come in on business. If you take any of the hotels in Abuja and then analyze how many came for sightseeing or for an event, you find that maybe the majority came for business. They came for conferences, which is also can be regarded as tourism, but otherwise it's business. They came maybe to meet a government or to attend a conference. So government has to go out of its way to help that private sector, and which for about 30 years, and since my coming in, and I've always been on the private sector side, but sometimes there's that competition, and that I've been involved in many, including the Oshun Oshobo. For about 10 years, I was going to Oshun Oshobo Festival without any break, and I was also going to the Agugu Festival, trying to promote it with Governor Alero. Sometimes you have to ask how much did the private sector make, because if nobody made money, to me it's not tourism, it's just maybe a jamboree. But how many people made money, either from selling rooms or from transport or souvenirs?
We will be taking your a break now.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
All right, you're still watching Tuesday Live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, and I still have my guests, Chief Olorunso Koka, Director General, Nigerian Tourism Development Authority, Otumba Biodun Ajiboye, Executive Secretary, Nigerian Institute for Cultural Orientation, Dr. Munzali Dantata, Chairman, Board of Trustees, Federation of Tourism Association of Nigeria, and former Director General, National Institute for Hospitality and Tourism, and Barrister Wale Ojolanre, Director General, Bureau of Tourism Corporation, Ekiti State. As you can see in his cap there, it says visit Ekiti. But this time we would be getting the thoughts of Otumba Biodun Ajiboye. We're talking about the ecosystem, the value chain, and the intentionality that is behind, traffic when people will come to your country. Tell us about these linkages and how we can get there.
There's a big connection between what culture can do and what tourism can achieve. Very big. What are we saying? We inscribed Doba as a UNESCO, heritage site. And what that inscription does is to open the global calendar for tourism. Now, look at what, without even a plan, look at what the Dirty December, look at what it has done to Lagos. Imagine we're able to inscribe the Eyo Festival, and a typical tourist anywhere in the world opens his calendar and says, this Eyo Festival is inscribed by UNESCO. It becomes a global issue. Everybody wants to come there. It will increase the rate at which the influx of people who are interested in what the festival has to offer. Okay? Osun Osogbo has been inscribed by UNESCO. So it is easier for tourists to say, this calendar, let me go there. But again, the people managing Osun Osogbo should do a lot better. Any tourism activity that does not attract economic benefit is falling short of his benefit or responsibility. So therefore, there must be an orchestrated plan to ensure that the local economy is boosted. How? Memorabilia, a lot of that, food, all of that. But we just like he said, there must be a policy, a tourism policy in place. There must be a lot of, just like culture. Our cultural policy is neither here nor there. We don't have a current cultural policy in culture. We have to have all of these things in place. See, it looks like Nigeria has not even started running itself, and that's the truth. So we're waiting for, and we can't wait for too long, crop of leaders that will take things back to the basics. Things have to go back to the basics. So imagine if we're able to succeed with Nigerian Academy for Cultural Studies, and we're able to graduate 50,000 students in 2 years, 3 years. We're doing something. We're reorientating the people, our young people. We're empowering and energizing them to be proud in themselves. Everything else follows from that point. So the connection between tourism and culture is strong, and we need to make effort to ensure that we are connected in positive ways. So, because what cultural tourism can do, it's a lot. But we have to have some synergy. We have to work together. I have to tell Foley, hey, this is what we're doing. When we get it up to this point, take it. You are the tourism person. But for instance, religious tourism. I was in Bahia with the late Alaafin for you some 12 or 13 years ago. And because that was after we did the Shango Festival. As a private sector person, I was running an advertising agency. And Alaafin called me and said, come and brand this Shango Festival for us. And we said, okay, because Shango is done in almost every part, in some part of the world that we can't even, Cuba. If you see them chant Shango, you'll be ashamed of yourself as a Yoruba man. What we're saying here is that, okay, fine. When we got to Bahia, we saw our tradition being practiced in the way that we had even forgotten, in the way that we have been discolored by religions. And it occurred to me that, okay, if they are doing this here, there is nothing wrong with Nigeria. The only thing wrong with Nigeria is the people that are put in position of power and how honest they are at executing certain policies. The act that created NICO actually says that we should actually incorporate culture in curriculum of schools. Now, I have a son who got married recently. When he was going to go to England some years back, I said, recite for me Akosori Yoruba. Murasishe Oremi, Ishelafin Deni Giga. Until he learnt it, he knew it, I didn't allow him to go. In fact, he missed a year because of that. What is the importance of that? How do you get to a place you are not even proud of your language? Okay? So what I'm saying in essence is that whatever made us feel that speaking English was the best for our children was an error. English is a language to communicate. Yoruba equally is a language to communicate. As I speak to you, there are over 215 million people struggling to learn Yoruba, and we are planning to establish schools to teach them that language in those places. So those who own the language are even almost forgetting the language. Those are the issues. Now, if we're able to incorporate culture into curriculum of schools, it will help. It used to be there. It used to be there. Whatever kind of English you knew how to speak, you must know how to speak deep Yoruba in those days when we were young. All of a sudden, everybody caught the bug of feeling like Americans, feeling like British. And that is practical erosion of our culture.
Apart from the traditional ruler, the state governments too have to take ownership of some of this. And, some states, or at least some cities, have completely perfected this, not necessarily in marketing, but in terms of observing those cultures. For instance, Benin. I worked there for years, and there are certain days that you can do this, you can't do this. For instance, days leading to Igwe festival is, you are waiting for the procession of the chiefs to come and pay homage, and then if you belong to the family, you dance with the main chief and then go to pay the homage and all that. It's like the town is shut down. How do we begin to, from the perspective of the regulators, find a way of promoting enthusiasm, even in the government, to let them see the potential and the gold mine on which they are sitting on top while chasing some wild goose somewhere else?
Yes. To some extent, I believe the commercialization of these festivals, I'm not saying suppress the culture. I'm saying the commercialization. The states look at it, the state governments look at it as a cost. They are not cheap festivals to hold. They are expensive. I can't imagine what it will cost to do a full-blown Eyo in Lagos now. They see the cost side of it. Not much revenue is generated from those events. So until they sit down and look at the commercialization of some of the basics of those events, and it's not very difficult. You have a whole town shut down. People are celebrating. They're consuming. It's a market. We tried something in Lagos many years ago, 10 years ago actually, almost to the 2015 to 2025. We did one Lagos Fiesta. And it was a crossover ceremony from 2015 to 2016, I think. It was private sector with government participation, free concerts in 5 locations for 5 days simultaneously. But we did something. In partnering with the private sector, we didn't just partner with the big companies. We partnered with the boys who will look after the cars, who will wash the cars, the mama put seller, the point and kill seller, from the very grassroots business level all the way to the corporates like Dangote, Glo, etc. And it was hugely successful.
Let's look at some of your interactions with governors, with heads of agencies while you were in the private sector. What are their major challenges, for instance, in sustaining this? Yes, we said these are capital intensive, but you have to put money to get money.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll give you an example with the Argungu Fishing Festival, which I was directly involved as a young private sector entrant into the industry. When Governor Alero came into office, the festival had not taken place for about 10 years. And to his credit, he jump-started it, and I was his partner. And he made presentation to President Obasanjo, and I was with him. And I remember President Obasanjo saying, well, I hope this is not just one of those shows which will not end up on the shelf of the governor's office. So, but to his credit, he brought back Argungu Fishing Festival, And President Obasanjo even visited for 3 years in a row. And every year he will come with a different head of state. Maybe the president of Benin, another time of Togo, and so on and so forth. And but after he left, the festival collapsed again. And then sometimes it comes back. And then it doesn't, but it's supposed to be an annual festival, and it has found its way into the calendars of many tour operators around the world. And I was a tour operator then, and I remember a lot of our counterparts from foreign countries asked about that festival, and that's how we got Alero interested to bring it back, and he did. So, but there's not been continuity with most of these festivals because most of the state governments do not build in the business aspect. The gain is not directly seen, but if for example, hoteliers get a full house, and those selling food, restaurants, and then tour operators, and even souvenir sellers, the whole city comes alive. So that is not something we should see directly. So the state government may spend ₦1 billion and get zero revenue. But maybe, the tourism operators could have, earned 2 billion, which goes into their businesses. And it's also helping to develop the town, and it's also bringing attention, especially when the international TV stations come. The BBC, CNN, they're always there when the Argun Fishing Festival is taking place, and especially when the, foreign leaders come. And the same thing with the Oshun Oshobo, and also the Daba in my home, Kano. So the tourism, it's the benefit should not be seen directly as a return to the government itself, but to the private sector in that state. And then that's how it can be sustained, and the government will not feel tired of organizing it, because if they take it from the point of view that it's just promoting culture, and then if it's just promoting culture, then to me it's not tourism, because tourism is business, so there must be a business angle to it, whether the government directly or the businesses in that state.
All right, let's go to Ekiti very quickly. You heard from Dr. Munzali Dantata in terms of his experience trying to resuscitate Agungu Festival. It came up and then went down a little bit and came up again. In terms of what you're trying to do in your state, what about the other infrastructure and the private sector as well? Are you getting a buy-in from them, hoteliers, or in areas that you have spoken about, the mountain or hills with several caves and an amphitheater? Are you having places where tourists can stay for days and keep on visiting, and have that also in your gazette or in your plan, and perhaps have a handshake with the private sector?
All right, let me thanks. Whatever Dr. Dantata has been saying, I was part of it. His resuscitation of Agungu, I was part of it. When we brought Ayoluboko for Oshogbo for 15 years, I was part of it. He's a private sector. He spent a lot of money. And, Dr. Dantata, in pushing the private sector until he became the president every time. And Ayoluboko too. In Ekiti, I must inform the world that as I'm talking, tourism is the curriculum of the secondary school in Ekiti State. That's number one. It is in the curriculum of Ekiti State. The governor has ensured that. So, by next week, we are starting what we call secondary school tourism quiz, national tourism quiz, all to sell tourism to the youth. Because if you don't, who needs tourism? It's the youth, not me, not doctor, not my brother at the cultural institute. We are getting older. We are getting old. It is these young people that we have to plant tourism. So we have that. In Ekiti State also, what we are really doing is, like I said, my governor said tourism is private sector. So we are involved. The first thing I did when I came to Ekiti was the inauguration of what we call NECA, Network of Creative Artists of Ekiti State, NECA. we have EFTAM, and we have established all the private sector organization in Ekiti State. Because this private sector are the one keeping us on our toes. If we leave here tomorrow, like we are discussing, all the tourism policy, all the tourism development master plan are in on the private sector. They are involved, we listen to their contribution, and we are taking it back to them for what we call it validation. This is how to grow a sector for sustainability. And remember, in Ekiti State, there is a law that says there is no abandon project, no abandon policy. No abandon project in Ekiti. There is a law against abandon project. There is no project as abandoned. If your predecessor could not complete a project, the law mandates you to complete it. So for us in Ekiti, by the grace of God and the power of and the authority of the governor, Ekiti will sustain all his tourism projects.
You were shaking your head because he was putting demographic appreciation into the issue of tourism. But a lot of people, is even when they get older and retire, that they start visiting and want to travel the world.
Tourism is not demography, issue. It's not about young or old. But the important thing is you mentioned something, and he too did. We are putting something together in my agency. And that is how to access the culture, which is tourism in actual fact, how to access culture of Nigerian people via the internet. Something like Facebook, replication of Facebook, but it is about the culture of Nigeria. It's called Dudu Plugs. Now, the potential, the economic potential of that idea, you can't imagine. I like to let you know that Facebook makes $1.4 billion per day. Per day. So, you can imagine with that kind of audience, in Nigeria, 200 million people, outside Nigeria, about 450 million people, you have a market. This can give us close to $20 billion per year. So, it is not about the fact that we don't have ideas. It is about the fact that we need to have the muscle, the guts, the energy, political will to pursue some of these ideas to conclusion. That is what is the problem here. So, I like the fact that tourism takes it from where some of us stop. For instance, culture. The one I was telling you about, World Orisha Congress, for instance, it has to do with a bit of cultural spirituality. Okay? But by the time you are able to intertwine the cultural spirituality with the willingness, you have tourism. And it's huge. Like I said,
the Shango thing, do you have fire eaters?
Well, that is the spiritual part of it. I am not a Shango worshipper, but I don't have anything against it. Okay? For instance, when I got to Brazil and we got to some of those Ileashe, they were asking me and I said I am an Ifa person. And it was good for them. They saw some of theirs. And it is a fact. So what I'm simply saying is that as much as we see potentials, our first priority should be how to tap these potentials to turn it into great opportunity and economic benefit for the nation. So if we have the energy to put all of this into perspective, Nigeria will come out of this situation. Tourism is, like I just told you, see how much money Spain makes from tourism. It is because they see tourism as business. They prepare the infrastructural requirements. You can't do tourism when you have no security. You can't do tourism when you have no stable power supply. So the World Orisha Congress I'm talking about will be a plan from the beginning. It's not going to be accidental. We will understand what is required, the kind of power we need. We look for investors because the market is ready. So once the market is ready, it's a question of making proper projections and then get investors to build proper infrastructure, hotels, accommodation along that corridor. So we need to develop, we need to appreciate that tourism is not natural. Tourism, you need to walk around it, put some things together to make tourism beneficial to you. And the world is going in certain ways that tourism will become, if not the most important, one of the most important ways for countries to generate revenue.
Especially when you can do everything, on the touch of your phone these days. You might want to travel sometimes. DG, you spoke about silos. We went to Osun State, we've gone to Bauchi, and some have lofty ideas, some have new ideas, some way forward in terms of how they can rebrand in terms of their tourism potentials and all that. But how do you break these fences that have been erected over time so that we have, a holistic approach to, revitalizing our, tourism sector, making it breathe properly, and allowing it, or at least giving it legs to achieve to get to its full potential?
Thank you. I think there are two quick, low-hanging fruits that can be used. First of all, the Presidential Council on Tourism. That is at the national level. Let's get it right. The foundation of all of this, no matter we have a tourism policy, if the law
have a target, perhaps a date or anything, are you moving in a direction that you've gotten?
Let me answer your question. There's a Presidential Council on Tourism and there's a Governors Forum. At the Presidential Council on Tourism, that's the national level, where all the stakeholders at the national level come together to understand that this is an instruction from the President that we must align this way. Then you take it to the Governors Forum, and you tell the governors, you can see any governor that has invested in their tourism assets will see the returns from it. It's not the federal government that's going to take money to invest in your local festivals. The days of that kind of money have long gone. If the state governments invest in their tourism assets, they can get technical support at the very least from all the federal agencies that are in the culture, tourism sector to push. And a little push from the federal government agencies is amplified when it gets to the state level. So if 6 agencies now choose to support Osho-Osogbo, and the Presidential Council on Tourism and the Governors Forum are all in sync, it's not difficult to achieve greater things than what they have done individually. As you already you asked in your initial question about the silos, there's too much silo thinking. It happens within federal government agencies as well, but within the state governments that we all individually as federal government agencies have to relate to, there's also that silo thinking. My land, my festival, my culture. Okay, how do I participate? Bring money. Now, you and I you know that's not possible. We have to participate in every level of what we have designed from the agency to implement there. If we don't get within the federal government agencies in the cultural tourism space, within the private sector, if you do not look at the regulations you have regulating you, some of these things are 30, 40 years old. They don't apply now. If you don't look at the skills you need, I was shocked when I came in here to see this studio and the amount of technology that is in here. If you don't look at the skills that you require to deliver 4K resolution to the audience that you want to reach, if you don't look at the building, the infrastructure, the air conditioning, the lights, etc., if you don't, this was not how we used to do interviews before. We used to have a sitting room setting until this very wonderful space came along. The events you curate must also change. Before you now look at the funding, before you can now sprinkle any kind of spice you want on it, you must have that fire, you must have that pot, and you must have your protein, carb, and veg. All
right, let's go to Ekiti as we round up. To Barrister Wale Ojulanre as we round up to Ekiti. So, of course, we're looking forward to your tourism policy, and from your state, you say all is kosher at the moment. But from the state level, the subnationals, you heard the issues of silo thinking. You have, to your credits, done something to revitalize the tourism sector in your state. But in terms of a handshake with bodies at the agencies at the federal level, are you also, in sync? And then moving forward, what are we expecting from your state in 2 minutes?
Yeah, we don't work in silo in Ekiti because it's one of the policies of the governor of Ekiti State that you cannot work in silo. So if everything we do, we share we spread our hand to all our collaborators. One of my collaborators is NTDA. The second collaborator is NIOTOS. The third collaborator is Federal Federation of Tourism Association of Nigeria. And when we were having our hiking, all of these agencies were there. And we make sure the immigration, police, the security officers, particularly Nigerian Union of Road Transport Workers, people don't talk about these people. They are the essential crucible for tourism development. If they don't want you to come to your state, NURT member will destroy your state. Of course, you understand. So the NURT chairman in Ekiti State is an ambassador. You see our cap on his head. He's an ambassador of Ekiti State tourism development. So we don't work in silos. We work. You can ask the DG, Chief Koka. You can have my mentor, Musa Lidantata. We have shared our hands of fellowship to them. So don't work in silos.
All right, all right. Thank you so much, Barrister Wale Ojulare. Thank you very much for your interventions tonight. We hope to visit Ekiti State soon and see exactly what is happening there. As we close very quickly because I'm going to end with Dr. Munzali Dantata. 40 years is no joke in that sector. But let me come to Otumba Biodun Ajiboye, culture and tourism. Marrying the two, in no distant future, we're expecting better results. But what are your comments at this time as we wrap up?
Nigeria should, I majorly represent culture, but I know that the end result of culture is tourism, no matter how, whatever. So I first of all would wish that the Nigerian state appreciate the essence of our culture, and not just appreciate, make our culture mainstay of our social policy. I mean, we have a program to say that policymakers, lawmakers, as a matter of fact, is in our act, that lawmakers, policymakers should undergo cultural training. How do you make laws for a people whose culture you do not understand? These are issues. There are fundamental issues that we need to address for this country to move forward. We can't continue to patch 64 years, 65 years. We can't continue to patch. I mean, we have been patching in the last 62 years that have been existing. The people that are 80 years, we've been patching in the last 80 years they've been existing. Are we going to be patching forever? Nigeria should come to a point where we take issues from the point of reality and approach them from angles that can benefit the Nigerian people. That's all.
Dr. Munzali Dantata,
Yes.
please, your thoughts at this time. You've been you've straddled the two sides, private sector and government. Where do we marry things so that we can move forward very quickly?
Well, I think it's for the two to see themselves as partners and for each to play its role. And that's the only way the industry will move forward. It's a multifaceted industry involving the airlines, the hotels, the tour operators, souvenir sellers. In fact, there are some who may not even appreciate that in tourism. Take, for example, let's say the communication, MTN and Glo. If, let's say, Lagos State, you have 1 million people buying scratch cards of MTN, and if through tourism, 2 million tourists come in, that it multiplies to 3 million people. So that makes MTN also a stakeholder in tourism. So there are many stakeholders who do not appreciate that they are stakeholders in tourism, who are maybe providing services in other sectors. So that's the only way for and you, in the course of this discussion, we talked about education. Just about 30 years ago, it was not on any syllabus in Nigeria. There was no degree or diploma offered in tourism. Well, the Polytechnic started, for example, Kaduna Polytechnic was one of those early institutions that were, teaching tourism. But today, universities are offering, and that's the same worldwide. And that's why an institute like Nautua came in to fill that gap when universities and other education institutions were not teaching tourism. So it's very important also to invest in the educational aspect of it, so that every player, will know their role and play.
Thank you so much for your closing comments. I want to thank my guests, Chief Olorunsho Kuka, Director General, Nigerian Tourism Development Authority, the main stakeholder in this discussion. Hopefully, when we talk to you again, there will be a better, scenario that we will enjoy in terms of those low-hanging fruits that we hope to pluck soon. Otumba Abiodun Ajiboye has demonstrated that, of course, culture remains a key part of national rebirth and reorientation to get to the promised land. Thank you very much for your intervention tonight. And of course, our friend from Ekiti State, Barrister Wale Ojolanre, Director General, Bureau of Tourism, Corporation Ekiti State, who says we should visit Ekiti State, especially Ikogosi, very soon. Perhaps we will put Olosunta and Orole in Ekiti State, in Ikere as part of our duties. All right, and of course, Dr. Munzali Dantata, who has been giving us, his experience. We've been leaning on his experience in terms of understanding the tourism ecosystem in the country. We thank you for your interventions, and we hope that your prayers for that symbiosis between the private sector and government comes to fruition, so that we see the very, very best of that sector. That has been Tuesday Live for today. Many thanks for watching, and of course, until when we come back again next week with another topic that will, of course, help us move Nigeria towards the better threshold in history. My name is Fisai Ogunfi. Thanking you for staying tuned. All the best. Enjoy the rest of your day. Good morning.